Alright, gang, so sorry for the delay not being in class today. Something unexpected came up. So we're going to do this in video form, and I'm going to try and cruise through this and see how far we get, and you should be well equipped to draw your face project for this week. So your assignment is to draw a face, and you've got your option of using either lead pencils or charcoal. And next week we are going to be doing watercolors, so don't forget to bring your watercolors with you. Okay, so when we look at the face, we've got a lot of individual features that are closely tied to each other. They're actually compiled, the eyebrows, the eyes, and the nose, the nostrils, the mouth. They're all in a very tight little space on our face compared to the overall form of our body. So if we want to get a good likeness of our subject, we are going to have to really pay attention to some of the relationships that are going on in that face. How far in the image the cheek is from the nose, what's the distance between the eyes, what's the height of the eye compared to one another, the width of the eye, the distance from the edge of the eye to the ear. All these kind of things just kind of play into making a good likeness. And so it's going to take a measure of accuracy and intense attention as we look at the details and try to convey them to our paper for the drawing. All right. So here you can, as you see, there's just a wide variety of faces and some similarities between the three that you see here, but a lot of, just at first glance, they look very different. And that's just the way the variety that is out there in humankind. Looking at just these two pictures, the one on the left seems to have a larger nose. The one on the right seems to have a pointier nose. The one on the left, the lips seem larger on the bottom for sure. Then the one on the right, the one on the left also has that hint of a dimple chin. So all these things are going to play into, again, capturing that likeness. And even if you look at the eyebrows, they're almost the opposite of each other, where the one on the left starts narrow from the center, and as it moves out, it gets wider. But the one on the right, her eyebrows are wider in the center and narrower as they move away. So these things are all going to be things you want to pay attention to. Here's just a general cross-section of people, and you can see that they are all very different, even though they fall into a category, right? But even just tone value of the skin is very unique on each of these people. And then if you're drawing older people, you're going to have that flavor of the wrinkles and how they gather and pull at certain sections of the face. So it's just another, it's almost a texture that you can incorporate into your drawings. So when we first start, if we were working from a photo or a live model, we just want to look at the overall shape of the person, just kind of let your eyes drift over the entire head and just get an impression of them. What jumps out at you? Is it their eyes? Is it their smile? Is it sort of their hairstyle? Different things that just stick out to you initially. And then you push a little further in and say, okay, well, what am I seeing in sort of the invisible world of, are they coming across as perturbed? Are they worried? Is there some sort of inner strength that seems to be radiating from them, or just a mischievous sense of humor? All these things can be conveyed in a photo or through a person and trying to capture their mood at the moment. And you can convey that to your drawing as well. One of the tricks you can do is kind of squint your eyes a little bit and look through your lashes, and you can kind of see an overall image kind of form, and that'll give you a good guideline or a starting point. Okay, so let's look at the overall shape of the head. You can start drawing it with a sphere and a cube. So if we look at the head, we can see the cranium could basically be a large sphere and the block as a jawline. So what we could do also is cut the sphere in half. So if we draw a sphere on our page here, let's see what I got going on here. Can't see that very well. That's why. So if we have a sphere, sorry, this is so crummy. Take a cross section of it. You can do it both sides if you want. And wherever you draw a line, that can be your key point for your brow. And then this line here can be the jawline. So this one is slightly turned. That's why it looks the way it does. But it gives you an overall head shape. Okay. Let's go back to so here's the same thing, and then you've got two planes that are created, the front plane and the side plane, which kind of gives you some places where the face can reside. So here's how it would play out in a illustration. We're going to look at that in a little bit more detail as to where those features sit. But you can turn your head in any direction really once you kind of master the ball, the sphere, and the cube method. If you look at the top picture, you see the face straight on. You notice that most people's heads are taller than they are wide, so that's just a general commonality. And then if they're in profile, the height of the head and the overall width from the back of the skull to the face tends to be like a cube. So just be aware that as it turns, it gets wider as you look at it. Here's an illustration of how you can use just sort of a generalized shape. So you can just lay in some basic eyes and nose structures. That always reminded me of this Queen album. But you can use those to make the male figure and the female figure. Another option you can do is to use the egg form to make a face. So here we have the egg shape added to our basic structures. So if you just got some Easter eggs, some plastic ones, you can use this as an example. You can use that center line, or you can get an egg out of the fridge and draw a line around it halfway down, and then half of that would be another line where it would be the base of the nose, and then halfway below that is the mouth. We'll look at that in more detail in a minute. But here's just again that image of if you rotate the egg as you hold it in your hand, then you can start to see how the relationships of the eyes to the nose to the mouth change. And then you could create these basic forms and make your male and female figures from that. So they're different, of course. The male figure is sharper, more angular, and the female faces tend to be smoother and more gentle lines. So here we can turn our egg in different directions, and we can see the results of how we can use those lines as a guide to place the eyes and the nose and the mouth. And then these two are just, again, in a more extreme angle from above and below. So when we want to draw our face, we just want to start with the egg shape, and then we'll go over these guidelines to help you figure out where to put your eyes, nose, and mouth. And then we can start working into those individual features. So we start drawing the nose and the eyes and the ears and so forth. And then we worry about the hair, and then we look at the last section, which is those minute details. So we tweak it. There's a billion things that could be tweaked in terms of the eye position and whatnot to just get that likeness that we're looking for. So here we go with the facial relationships. This is super important. So if we look at this image, we've got our overall height of the head. Halfway down is kind of where our eyes sit. So right in the middle of that egg shape, our eyes are there. If you make another halfway mark between the eyes and the bottom of the chin, that's roughly where the nose sits. And then the mouth is again halfway between that. Your ears tend to go from your brow, your eyebrow, to your nose. And then your eyes are one eye length apart. So however wide you make your eyes, you make that same distance, and that'll give you the starting point for your next eye. So let's look at this in detail. So we start with our overall egg shape. This is horrible. I don't usually do a digital tablet like this when I'm drawing, so it'll look kind of sketchy, which is okay. So there's our overall egg shape. Here's the top, oops, and the bottom. So if we go halfway down and just kind of sketch in a line, that should be where our eyes are sitting, roughly. You could also draw a vertical line down the center just to kind of help you bisect the face. And then if I want my eyes to be a certain size, I could draw in the center here, and as long as I make that same kind of shape on either side, that should give me the right distance for the eyes. So let's see here. Whoops. I don't even know what I'm doing. Hit the wrong button, that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to erase a little bit here. It's a really small eraser. Oh my gosh, what the heck? There. Okay, I'm going to clean out the center too. So there's roughly where my eyes sit. And then halfway down again from that to the bottom of the chin, I'm going to sketch another line. And that should be about roughly where the nose sits. And then if I divide it again, that should be where my mouth sits. And then you could divide this up top again, and that should be your hairline. So just really quick basic stuff. I'm going to go with my black here. And I start drawing in. Now this is going to look like it's in pencil because it's a pencil brush. And I'm just going to start laying in some features. It doesn't have to be accurate at this point because I can always erase. So I got my eyebrows. So then my ear is going to start there and go down to my nose. Oops, a little too short there. There we go. So that should give you a general starting point, and then we'll look at some of the details of it later as we move on. So I can put my hairline in, and a big swoopy thing. He's got some wild hair and getting crazy. And oh my goodness, look at it. And so this is a dude, so I'm going to strengthen his jawline a little bit. It looks kind of like a crazy child. And I'm going to look up here. Okay. So that just gives you, again, a starting point to jump from. So let's go back to here. So here's just a photo of the same thing, just illustrating where the mouth and the nose and the eyes are. So if you'll notice also, the edges of her mouth, when she's smiling at least, are going to line up with the pupils of her eyes. So that's another cheat you can use. If you look off the center of her eyes, or not the center, but this, the two corners towards the center, the inside parts of her eye, those should line up with the outside of the nose. So here again is just a quick way of drawing the egg, dividing it in half. Going to the bottom section, dividing that in half gives us our nose, and then dividing again in half, that bottom section below the nose gives us our mouth. So it can either be, depending on your person, the mouth could be sitting on that line or slightly above it, but it gives you a ballpark idea. And then we can take those basic forms and start to flesh them out. Again, those angular lines for the man, the harder, thicker jawline, and the women have the smoother features. You can get crazy with kind of measuring if you want. You can find more about this online, but I don't think it's really necessary. And then you can start experimenting with moving the head in various positions. So the alternate method is to actually just kind of use your squinting method to look at the overall shape, and then work in with your horizontal and vertical lines, and then lay in your shadow shape. So you're looking at these shapes that are in the photo as individual trap shapes. So you can kind of abstract them and just draw those shapes in, as instead of thinking of them as a mouth and nose and chin, but just look at those individual shapes, and then that gives you an overall form, and then you can work into the details of it. Whatever works for you. Alright, so features. The basic structure of the nose is kind of 4 sections, as you can see by the construct they've got here. So it's basically a cube or a rectangular shape that has been sort of shifted and tapered. The ear falls into 3 sections, but I'm not too worried about that because most of what you're looking at is going to be straight on. So here's so you can see how someone has used the basic shapes to really break down into individual pieces, and then continue that forward as they just start to soften those shapes up to get the drawing on the right. The eye is basically a big sphere, but we don't always see. We obviously don't see the whole of the sphere, so we just see a slight section that is kind of wrapped inside the eyelids. But we do want to kind of be aware that there is that sort of curved shape to the eyeball. The mouth has 2 parts, the upper lip and the lower lip, and then the top can be divided into 3 sections, as you see in the top image, and then the bottom into 2 sections, and then you can see how it changes over. You got a variety of images there to look at. This is in your book, I think. I don't remember. So variations of noses. Everyone's got some distinctive noses. Some can be well defined, and again, you're just looking at basic shapes to kind of help guide you through that process. Ears are distinct. Sometimes the lobe ties directly into the chin of the skin. Sometimes it dangles, so things to watch out for. And then the eyes, the best thing you can do with the eyes is, you can see here, this one has this little highlight. That's probably the best thing you can do with any kind of eye is as you're looking at the eye itself. Here's my top eyelid, here's my bottom, so you can work in your lashes and whatnot. But the eye itself, so my method of doing it is kind of make the circular shape, make kind of a scribbly line around the outer edge, drawing the circle in the center, your iris, and darken that up for sure, and then start playing with some sort of abstract radius shapes, and then using my eraser, I want to go in and see how big we want this. Make a highlight in there. So I will have our eyes will always reflect light, so you can define it like that or leave it as the erased shape. But that we always want to highlight in there because it just makes it pop a little more. Obviously, anime characters or manga characters are extremely have some very powerful highlights in their eyes, and it's just, again, the idea of reflecting light. So here's our egg shape starting on the left, and then adding those box shapes of the nose and the sphere on top of it to get us the image on the left, and then working in with the shadows and the shading on the right. These are in your book. So here's one that's in charcoal on a gray paper. They lay down a layer of charcoal and then work into it. This one's almost a gesture drawing because they're starting with the sketch first. They're not really taking the time to draw the egg shape. But you get some nice effects either way. The most important thing that you're going to need to be doing is comparative measuring. So you want to know if your subject's head is wider than it is tall in terms of the overall shape, but then also what is that relationship for the face itself. So if you see this bottom image down here, you can use your pencil and start measuring things. So they're measuring from the top of his head to his eyeglasses, and then from that same point down to his chin, saying, okay, well those are equal, so that's the midway point of this person's face. You can measure one eye, and like we talked about, the space between those eyes should match. Start comparing distances. What's the relationship between the chin to the nose, and the nose to the side of the face, and the nose to the eyes? The width of the nose should match the width of the eye, so that's pretty interesting. You'll see in the bottom image here, they're measuring the width of the nose. That they're saying should match the same width of the eye itself. And we talked about this before, how the pupils of the eye also line up with the edges of our mouth. And then just be aware not to make the neck too skinny. You want to make sure that you know where the neck is tying in to the head. The other thing is that vertical line, as the head turns, that we draw, as the head turns, that vertical line is going to turn as well. So you're using that as a guide to bisect the face, so you have to have, in a sense, the right amount of division in terms of the nose, in terms on one side as the other, and the mouth, so it will help you line up the mouth. So as the head turns, everything shifts in that direction, so the tip of the nose and the far cheek are going to be close, if not touching or overlapping if you've got a big old nose. So you're going to watch those. If there's a trapped shape, such as the edge of the nose and the edge of the cheek, you can draw a trapped form instead of, oops, hang on here, delete, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So if the nose comes down here and the chin or the cheek comes down, and then you've got these, whoops, I don't even know what happened. Sorry, what's going on? Alright, I'll have to fix that for the next video. I'll show you here in a second. Okay, the pupils, again, as the head's turned, at the side that we see, the pupils will align with the edge of the mouth, so nothing's changing there. You're going to compare the length of the head to the height of the head. Okay, so here's your trap shape. So any kind of thing that is formed in kind of like this standalone shape, you want to be able to draw that. You can draw that as an abstract shape, and then as long as it's done accurately, it should convey the person's face pretty well. The distance from the eye to the back of the ear should be the same as the eye to the chin. Also, pay attention to the way the eyes change. So the eye that's closest to you should look fairly much the same. But as the eye on the other side, you're going to see more of that curve of the eye, the curve of the sphere. And so that eye is actually going to look wider, not wider, more open. So the eye itself will look taller and more oval looking. And then pay attention again to where the neck ties into the back of the ear or the head. So in this example, the one on the left, the mouth is too far to the right, so it doesn't look quite right. And the next one, the mouth is too far to the left, so you see the lips are very protruding outward, breaking the plane of the chin or the cheek. But properly aligned, it should look like the one on the right. Okay. All right, the profile. I'd rather you do a drawing that is directly on, straight on to the face. But it's good to know some of these pointers about the profile. So like we talked earlier, the head, as you look straight at it, is taller than it is wide. But as the head turns, they actually become almost nearly equal in distance and height, in terms of width and height. If you're using the egg method, you can turn the egg 45 degrees, and then that gives you the baseline for laying out the rest of your shapes. And then there's how you break it down into the various planes and facets for the male and female face. That's in your book. Or you can draw it, just start sketching and try to figure out what the relationship is between the features, but this is often fairly difficult. But with comparative measuring, you can measure the height and width and figure out what the relationship is there. The eye to the back of the ear should match the eye to the chin, so that hasn't changed from the earlier images we saw. The corner of the mouth lines up with the pupil of the eye, so again, that is the same. You can put the nose along the features, put the pencil along the edge of the features and kind of create trap shapes, so you can kind of get a better idea of the profile outline. So because that front section is super important, that's kind of what defines us, how our lips look in profile, how our nose looks in profile, our forehead, and whatnot. So one of the things you'll notice is that the front of the eye to the bridge of the nose should be pretty close to the same size as the width of the eye. And then you want to compare the mouth to nose distance. So in this case, it's 1/3 compared with the mouth to the chin distance, which is 2/3. So that's, if you were dividing that in half from the chin to the nose, that halfway mark would hit along the bottom lip. So right in here. 3/4 view. Some of you might draw things in this way. So again, it's the egg shape. It's a little taller than it is wide because it's going to look more on the frontal image. The key here is as the head turns, the more the back of the skull is revealed, so just try not to shave off too much because there's a tendency to do that because we want it to look like that face, but we want to maintain sort of the overall three-dimensionality of the depth of the head. So we want to compare. What are the relationships of the facial features one to the other? You could take your drawing or your image that you're working from and actually start sketching in planes and try to figure out, okay, what's the relationship? What is laying on what plane and how the face is divided up, as you see in these images. So this one you can see really good that the inside section of the eyes, that distance between the eyes, which is the same width of the eye, is also the same width as her nose. So this is more for your entertainment realism, photorealism. So we want to try to draw as realistically as we can because we're trying to capture the image of this person. But some people are really, really good at it, and it looks almost like photorealism. So their drawings look like photos, such as these two. And these are just crazy. Sometimes they tend to be really, really large, so 3 foot by 4 foot. I'm not too sure about the sizes on these, but the one on the right, you can definitely see how big it is compared to the size of a pencil. And that's just intense. Like all the little textures on the skin have been rendered, and that's just really a lot. Very cool, but very daunting to try to undertake. Our assignment, so as we do our drawing for this week, we're going to draw and shade a portrait. So you want to choose a picture or light your subject so that they do have shadows on their face. The one on picture on the left is not a good one to be working from because the front, the face is being lit from the front, and there is a lot of details and whatnot in the skin and contour wise that is being hidden because it's so front lit. So any of these three kind of pictures on the right hand side is a much better drawing to work from because you can see the contours of the face, you can see that three-dimensionality. And remember, as we're shading, you want to make that transition from dark shading to light shading as smooth as possible so that we understand that this is a smooth surface that we're working on. All right, that's it. Okay, I think we survived pretty well. So just as a quick recap, let's jump over here. We want to start with an egg shape. That is terrible again. Sorry guys, I'm not used to drawing with this tablet. Make it a little wider. Start dividing it up. Whoops, halfway and halfway. So our eyes are somewhere in here, and kind of make the shape 3 times. The center one is going to go bye-bye. And hold on a second. Alright, so grab our eraser and kind of, whoa, that's really big. Start to erase that section out. We're going to divide this in half. It's pretty terrible. So that's our nose. You can divide that again. I need to start erasing some stuff here because it's way crazy here. Let's keep the lines that I think I'm going to use. Okay. I only need 1 line here, not 16. Okay. Divide that, and then here's our jaw. So there's my nose, my mouth, my eyes, my hairline, my ears. Again, I kind of drew them too short. But alright, so there's my roughed out shape of the face. And oops, that neck is terrible. Alright, and now we're going to start working into details. I don't normally, well, I guess it might be a tendency to the fact that I'm drawing a little white dude. Most of my comics, though, are not white. Okay, so I got my eyes. Remember, if I come straight down here, that should be the edge of my mouth. There we go. Start working the eyes. It should be about the same distance here to here. So I'm slightly off-centered because I kind of drew it at an angle. So because of that, I think I need to trim this up and enlarge my ear on this side so that he's looking at an angle at you. Okay. So one of the things that I see a lot of student work is I see this kind of thing, saying that that is the nose. Our noses don't really look like that, so keep in mind you've got sort of a ball section that kind of sticks out that our nose is sort of defined by. So if you kind of look at it almost in quadrants, you can do the nostrils there, and then figure out how the bridge ties in. So this is all curved shape. And then you've got this sort of divot in the mouth right before the lip. So you want to be aware of what that is. And so you could always shade that in as well, kind of help define those areas. So we're not doing a little cartoon pig shape, but we're trying to accurately capture how those nostrils relate to one another. So yeah, you can spend a lot of time just, again, paying a lot of attention to how the nose, not right now, Luke, how it all interrelates to each other. Hold on a second. And then we've got the arch of the brow. Okay. The other thing that you will have is, let me get rid of this. What, Luke? Yeah, there is a mess out there. The eye comes across like this. Tends to be thicker as you draw your lashes. And then there's a sort of secondary line that's the eyelid. So you want to be aware of that as well. This is my son Luke. He's talking to you all.
I can't open the door.
Well, no, you can't open the door. Oops, a little carried away there. Yes, but I can open the door, but we're not going outside at the moment.
I want to go outside.
Okay, so that at least gives you enough to get going. There's materials in the material section of your folder that you want to look at, and also don't forget next week we are starting watercolors, so bring your watercolors to class. Alright, I hope that helps. There's videos in the materials folder. You can always look on YouTube for some more pointers. There's a handful out there that are pretty good. Proko has an entire page. If you look at Proko on YouTube. He's an artist and he goes into a lot of the muscles and stuff. We looked at his stuff before, so you'll recognize it. But there's other people of various skill levels that can also kind of convey the same information. All right, talk to you next time. Hope you enjoyed that. Okay, bye.